Our moderator, Tony Profits, Chief Equality Officer, Salesforce. And panelists, Ibtihaj Muhammad, entrepreneur, activist, speaker, and Olympic medalist. And Dr. Mae Jemison, entrepreneur, advocate, and the first African-American woman in space.
Well, it's been a fantastic day, and I think many of our incredible energy in the room. We have literally hundreds of thousands of folks that have checked in and joined us online, and so hello to all those that are watching the stream and the folks that are watching this after the fact, the recorded events of the day. And the day just keeps getting better, and we've got a delightful treat with these two incredible trailblazers, heroes, and leaders. And so you heard in the introduction just a synopsis, and I won't steal any of their thunder. And I'm just awestruck and honored and privileged to be here with you. And so I just start with just telling you a little bit about your personal story. Ibtihaj, maybe we'll start with you, and then Dr. Jemison, we'll go to you, and I may slip up and call you Dr. Mae or Mae along the way, but Dr. Jemison. But Ibtihaj, we'll start with you.
First of all, hi. I'm really excited to be here. I am an Olympic medalist. I'm a fencer. Do you guys know what fencing is? Yeah. I've been a member of the United States national team for 8 years. I'm the first Muslim woman to represent the United States at the Olympic Games wearing hijab, and also the first Muslim woman to bring home a medal for our country. So, long story short, I did not have dreams of becoming a professional athlete. I thought I would be a doctor. That was always my plan. But God had another plan. I started fencing at 12. My mom and I were literally driving past our local high school, and we saw athletes from the road into the high school. We saw athletes that were fully covered. They had on long white jacket. They had on long white pants, what we thought were helmets. And my mom said, I don't know what that is, but I want you to try it. And that's how I started fencing. It uniquely accommodated my religious beliefs as a young Muslim kid who was going to start wearing hijab soon. And I always say that I didn't find fencing, but fencing found me. I always felt out of place as a kid when I had to change my uniform to adhere to my religious beliefs. And fencing was the first time in my life where I really felt like I fit in. And throughout my career, I've had moments where people have tried to make me feel as if I don't belong, or I shouldn't participate in the sport of fencing because I'm African American, or Muslim girls shouldn't play sports. And I've never allowed anyone else's misconceptions about my identity deter me from reaching my goals. Instead, I use that as total motivation to just, be a badass and show them what I'm capable of. So, really, the Olympic dream was born out of people telling me that it wasn't possible.
Well, high school is pretty late to start a sport, and then to become like a world champion and an All-American and an Olympic medalist, it almost seems unreal. I'm just kind of curious, how did you go and start so late, and how did you catch up and pass and become, the best in the world? How did you do that?
Well, for me, fencing to me was a means to an end. I started fencing not only because I really enjoyed just participating in sport, but also fitting in. But I want to use it to go to a good college. I'm from a large family. I'm one of 5 kids. My dad is a narcotics detective. My mom's a teacher. So I had to be creative with how I planned to pay for school. Once I got into the good school, I went to Duke, fenced for Duke. I graduated in the middle of a recession and had a hard time finding a job, to be completely honest. It was hard to not only be to graduate in a recession, but also be a woman of color, to wear hijab, and have people tell you no. It was hard. And during that time of finding myself and studying for the LSAT and applying to law schools, I was also fencing. And I remember looking at Team USA and thinking to myself that this isn't representative of the America that I know. I grew up in a really diverse town. I'm from Maplewood, New Jersey. It's about 30 minutes outside of New York City. Super diverse, very inclusive. And to me, the US fencing team was not that. I'm the first woman of color to represent our country on a national team. And that's crazy. It's, 2019. I shouldn't still be the only one there, So it really was about making it a space, not just for me, but for anyone who's ever been told that they don't belong.
Well, you're a true American hero, but you're a hero to folks all over the world, all gender identities, all races, all ethnicities. Congratulations on all that you've already accomplished and all the amazing things that you're still doing, and we're going to get to that. And we have another amazing American hero as well, in Dr. Jemison. And maybe just tell us a little bit about your story and some of the highlights and some of the role models you had along the way. And
wow, so that's a lot. Let me just start off by telling you, I look up at there, so I'm looking around me, and I see that the identifier is former astronaut. And that always bothers me, and you know why? Because it assumes that, well, first of all, you're a former astronaut, what are you doing now, or did you ever do anything before? Let me describe myself to you. So, I'm a way over 40-year-old African-American woman who is a wannabe dancer, right? I was an engineer, studied African-American studies, a physician. I was an astronaut. I've lived in different countries. I've done lots of things. I've been a teacher, a professor, an entrepreneur, started international science camps, and done nonprofit work. But deep inside, when I see myself, I remember that little girl who used to dream of the stars and who used to look up at the sky when I was growing up on the south side of Chicago in the 1960s. And what's really interesting about that is I didn't necessarily say I wanted to be an astronaut. I just assumed I would go into space, and people might have asked, why would I think that? When at the time the United States didn't have any women astronauts, and they had no people of color in going into space. But I didn't really care, because I knew that I had the talent, and I wasn't about doing that. It was really about what did I want to do and figuring out a way to do it. I was very interested. I wanted to be a scientist, but I wanted to be a dancer. And so I tried to do all of those, right? And you have to decide what to do. When I think of myself right now, I really think more about creativity. So what are the pieces that hold that together? It's just, I want to know, I'm a busybody, right? And it's really about creativity. And so for me, when I look around, I think the most important things that we can do are to really appreciate what drives us, what motivates us. And that's who I see. So when I look up and I see former astronauts, like, wow, I got stuck there, huh? And we were talking earlier today about what do you do with your life? Every step of your life is part of a journey, right? So being an astronaut, being the first woman of color in the world go into space, you talk about something that makes no sense whatsoever. When I applied to the astronaut program, there was no way, or when I was a little girl, there's no way I could have imagined that I would be the first of anything to go into space. It really made no sense whatsoever. But to be the first woman of color in the entire world to go into space, it made no sense whatsoever, right? But once you have that place at the table, what do you do with it? You have to use your background to help influence the questions that are asked. What happens? Do you make sure that there are other people who come along? But even more so, it's not about only making sure there are other people coming along. It's about how do you use your influence to change the questions that are asked, to change the problems that are solved. And those are some of the big pieces that I think about in STEM fields right now. They're cutting a wide swath in our world, right? When you look at science, technology, engineering, mathematics, however you want to add, whatever you want to add in there, they're changing our world. And yet women are very poorly represented in those fields. And very frequently, even when we go and we get the degree and we do the work to get in, we're not necessarily leading the projects, or we feel reticent to apply our perspective. And so when I describe myself, I would say I want to be someone who uses my place at the table to change the questions that are asked, the solutions that are proposed, and the standards by which we measure things.
Well, no, super well said. Engineer, scientist, physician.
Dancer,
right? Aspiring, that's right. and amazing. I have to confess, we were talking backstage, And I had just seen, not just seen because it's protracted, over a period of time, The One Strange Rock, and I had been watching that with my 8-year-old. And so I kind of sense like, when you see someone on TV, it's like you feel like you know them, but you've never met them before because we've seen you, you've lit up our screen and telling the stories of your life and also the stories that happened as part of the space program. But again, you're both these iconic heroes that folks, again, of all races and all gender identities are looking up to you and it's super, super inspired by you. Now, along the way, just tell us some of the challenges that you faced, maybe some of the ones that maybe are unexpected, and how you overcame them, and who kind of inspired you and motivated you along the way in this journey.
You're looking at me.
Yes, please.
I just like to say I'm not a dancer. I wish I was. Not a dancer,
It's like
though.
you're doing fencing, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right, I always think, I feel like if my parents put me in dancing, I'd have a gold medal and not a bronze medal, right? Next time. But when I think of influence, right, and how the household that I grew up in, the people I was around, how they shaped my mind and my visions and how I saw myself growing up, I feel like I owe a lot to my mom in pushing me past what society's limited expectations of me were, and always encouraging and motivating us. Like in our household, being mediocre just wasn't acceptable. If you brought home like an A-, my parents were like, "What is wrong with you?" Like how's this possible? Even as a professional athlete, I'll never forget. I my first top 16 in the world, which is a big deal. Like when I graduated from college, I had no world ranking, no senior ranking. I'd never been to a senior competition before, so I was started from like the bottom, and so imagine like climbing. I went from 350 in the world all the way to like world number 6. And I remember the first time I made top 16 at a World Cup, my parents are like two sides of the same coin. My mom bought, she met me at the airport with like a bouquet of flowers and top like Sweet 16 balloons. And I got home and my dad's like, "Well, who won?" So I feel like even like in winning an Olympic medal, like no one in my family talks about it. Like we stopped talking about it like the day afterwards because it's just kind of like, like what's next? You keep pushing yourself. And as Dr. Mae said, it's like, what happens next? What can you do next? And I also feel like I'm a busybody and I'm always looking for like the next project. And I feel like I owe so much of that to my mom. And she has always told not just me, but also my siblings that we have to use the things that we've been blessed with to be agents of change and to affect our communities, not just locally, but also globally in meaningful ways. And I think that just comes from having like good parents and yeah.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Tell us a little bit about the training. So what was that like?
Are you thinking about going to the Olympics?
It may be.
Yeah.
Yes, the senior Olympics.
Yeah.
That would be the stage I'm at of life.
It's very, very difficult. So if anyone's thinking about it, like hardest thing I've ever done in my life, it requires a lot of just myopic focus in a sense that you jeopardize relationships with family and friends, and no one understands your journey, and that's okay because your journey is unique to you. And that's something that I had to learn as I got older. I remember having a really hard time in seeing my friends graduate from, graduate school, law school, medical school, have these like 6-figure jobs. And here I was, trying to make my first team and just dealing with the social pressures of that come with, you just being on track to trying to, represent your country at the highest level of sport. It's a lot of, in the trenches, a lot of injuries, a lot of tears. For me, I was traveling in a space where my teammates didn't accept me. It was very clear that I was not wanted there, but I made sure that I just was very focused on myself and my own development. And again, something I had to learn. I released my memoir a few months ago, and in my memoir, Proud, I talk about suffering from depression and reaching these high points in my career, like winning world championships and making teams and having my world ranking climb, but also feeling that pressure of having to perform. And as Black athletes, oftentimes we have to be exceptional in order to be accepted. And when our team won, Like, I feel like my teammates were celebrated. But when we lost, it was, well, Ibtihaj, what did you do? And I had to deal with that in ways that allowed me to continue to excel as an athlete. And one of the greatest things I've ever done for myself is to seek help with our sports psychologist and really understand the pressures that you can place on yourself and how unhealthy it can be, but also how freeing it is to just be content with being happy and living in the moment and not putting pressure on yourself. And I've had the most successful moments in my career when I really just lived in the moment, and I decided to be a cheerleader for myself as opposed to beating myself up, when I wasn't successful.
Well, first of all, that's an incredibly important lesson for all of us at every stage of life, and being happy with yourself and accepting yourself. And it's really resonant with some of the things that we've heard earlier in the day from other amazing speakers. And Dr. Jemison, I mean, obviously you probably felt the pressure, and tell me if I get this wrong, but you're at Stanford at 16 and went on to medical school, and then the NASA, all the selective NASA program, and being an MD, and just tell us all, that journey, and what were some of the challenges along the way? Because there's obviously so many of them. They were surmountable because you accomplished so much, but just tell us, maybe give us some insights into some of that part of the journey.
So what I would say is to start off with, so when I went to Stanford when I was 16, I was the third kid in my family to go to college. My sister was like, straight A, honors student, homecoming queen, all that kind of stuff. So I'm 4 years younger than her. My brother bared the brunt of it because he was 1 year behind her, right? So by the time I got through, it was old hat for my parents, And what I didn't realize is how much faith that they had in me to allow me to come from Chicago and go to Stanford. This is back in the day. You guys won't even recognize this. This is when you might go to a college without ever visiting it.
Yeah.
It's just like anathema now, right? But somebody remembers that, like you just go to it. And then I realized how much confidence, you just have no idea, right? And it's like so much confidence in me to go, and I also had that confidence in myself because I had been student council president and some other things for a while. So when I look at some of the challenges that I face, sometimes they're more internal, right? There would, like, how do you get over these things where people are putting pressure on you, but you also have to understand what you do with yourself. By the time I got to the astronaut program, I was pretty comfortable. I had been the Area Peace Corps medical officer in Sierra Leone and Liberia for 2 years. I was 2.5 years. I was living in Freetown. I was on call 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I was responsible for the health of volunteers and State Department personnel in Sierra Leone and in Liberia for the volunteers. So there was this range of things that I already had to do. I'd been an intern at LA County USC Medical Center, which was a whole nother thing. So by the time I got to NASA, my level of, hey, it's just work. We can do this, the things that you've been through. Now, the interesting part about being at NASA, the stuff I had to get over is just really going to sound silly, right? I didn't like heights. And I realized really early on when I said, this is true, this is absolutely true. Okay. And so I had actually tried to desensitize myself to heights for many years leading up to that. I really did not like heights. And so when you're learning to do parachute training, this is this internal stuff, right? When you're learning to do parachute training, you have to jump off of a platform that's like about 12 feet high. That's the first thing you do. Anybody who doesn't like heights knows that when you say 12 feet to 15 feet, that is not a good thing. So I had to make the decision, was it more important for me to honor my fear of heights or to be an astronaut? So I jumped off the platform, right? I dug deep. There's no way I'm gonna let these guys know, right? Then I'm not gonna jump. And so I keep doing, and then you have to do things like you parasail behind this Jeep, and you have to knock yourself loose from the Jeep, and you go to there. Then they take you up about 500 feet in the air, and instead of you have to look at the person in the boat that's pulling the boat. And it's like, okay, we get over it. Then you think that's finished. My first assignment was working at Kennedy Space Center, where I was, I had to go up on the launch pad at night, right? The launch pads are these gratings, and you can look down at but that's my job, so I got over it. But let me just tell you one story about people doubting you sometimes, and this is where you can have fun with it, right? So we're doing survival training. And so you go out into the woods. My dad hunted. I had gone fishing with him, I cleaned animals, all that kind of stuff, right? And we go out into the woods with this group, and it's like, Top Gun test pilots, Army Rangers, that kind of stuff, right? That's the folks we're with. There were 2 women in my group. And some of the airmen who were leading the survival training, they caught a couple of grouse birds. And so they decided they were going to pick on somebody in the group, right? There are about 6 people in my team. They gave me the grouse, and they said, could you, clean it? And I guess that I was supposed to say, ooh. But so I pulled the feathers off, and then they said, well, you got to do the inside. And I said, it's already done. Here are the guts. Yeah. And I just show them in my hand. It's like, why do you pick on the doctor to clean a bird, right? Just come on now. It's having fun. But most of these things, these issues are usually inside what you do inside of yourself that you have to deal with, sort of. And sometimes they're really good things, like I think I can take on every project. And sometimes you have to say, well, just say no, or you can't take on this project, and there's nothing wrong with it. But the first thing you have to get through is what's inside of you. And those challenges you'll be able to overcome. People doubting you, you have to say to yourself, I'm not here to honor their doubt. That's not really, I have to, if they're making a judgment, or they're the gatekeepers, then I have to do what I need to do to get through that gate. But it's not to make them feel good about their doubt, right? It's about getting what I want to accomplish. So what I kept in my front of my desk at NASA was the word purpose. Because I had to remember, I wanted to go into space. That's the reason I was at NASA. I wasn't there necessarily to be anybody's friend, their buddy, right? I wanted to go into space. So my purpose was to go into space. So I did those things that affected that.
Wow. Well, it's incredibly powerful. And then those lessons of overcoming your fears or the hard work and putting it in and overcoming adversity, they translate now into the current projects, because you're both working on many amazing projects. But let's focus on just 2 of them. And your entrepreneurship initiative now, and the brand that you're working on. Tell us a little bit about Luella and the brand that you're fostering.
Well, really quickly, I love that you, but I love that you use, just this reminder that you could see every single day, purpose. I had a water bottle. I failed to make the Olympic team in 2012. And I saw it broke everyone around me. And for me, I was like, meh, it wasn't in the cards, right? I feel like anything that's meant for you will never miss you. It wasn't my team. And I had a water bottle that had Olympic rings on it. And I bought it because I didn't make the team. And I put it on my desk, and I saw it every single day. And I looked at it for 4 years. But for me, it was just a constant motivation to reach this goal that I have for myself. I never wore Olympic rings. I never talked about the Olympics. In my house, it was taboo to mention. Because it was such a far-fetched dream. I felt like if I said it out loud, it would disappear. But to have this water bottle for me was like a reminder, this is something that you can do, but if you continue to work hard. So I love that story of purpose. I forgot your question.
No, but taking that purpose, so now you're translating that into your current
Oh my gosh, right? I forgot about that, yes. I'm a small business owner. I started a company with my sisters and my brother about 4 years ago. It's called Luella, named after our grandmother on my dad's side. And it was the idea of the company was born out of necessity. There's a void in the United States market for modest fashion. There was no one making modest clothes in a cute, fashionable way. So that's where I come in. We started with about 10 pieces on our site. We have grown, to over 60, 70 pieces on the site, and we make everything from the outfit I have on to kimonos to skirts. We do a lot of dresses. And a question we get every single day is through emails like, oh, I love your stuff. I wish I could wear it. I wish I were Muslim. And it's like, well, we don't track the religious beliefs of our customers. We make clothes, or the purpose of our company is to provide women with a space to wear clothes where they're allowed to express themselves. Express yourself through what you wear. All of our clothes are under $200. We make everything in ethical fashion in Los Angeles. And it's just fun to work on a project with my siblings. It's something that I love to do. And what I love most about it is that when I was younger, I didn't have this. You know, we used to layer. We used to go to like Forever 21 and buy like a spaghetti strap dress. And then we would go to H&M and buy the long sleeve top. And then you still had to find a hijab, and it was just a mess. But now you don't have to do that because Luella's here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I love what you're doing and the inherent purpose of allowing folks to be their authentic self and to feel good while they're doing it. And that's so much about what today is about for folks of all different identities. And so you're empowering lots of folks by what you're doing. And so you've taken on this relatively small notion and venture of man space flight, person space flight, human space flight.
How come that was hard for you to say?
Huh? What?
No,
outside,
I'm sorry. Human
outside,
space flight.
Human space flight outside the solar system.
You're gonna excuse me for messing you, because it's really interesting, because it's this for one period of time at NASA, we had gone very much to human space flight, and then all of a sudden manned space flight popped back in and sort of is like a tick in the rug or in the dog's back or whatever that you can't get out. And it's really because it's humans. It's really about humans. And I'm just going to tell you one story, and then I'll tell you about 100-Year Starship. But there was the 25th anniversary of the Apollo landing, and I was at NASA. I was asked to represent NASA down in Brazil, and so I was talking about humans landing on the moon when we were talking about what kind of flag we're going to give. And one of the astronauts, who will remain nameless right now, said something to me, well, it was like men who, it was actually a man. I said, but women put them there, right? And so then we really sort of see hidden figures and all of those kind of things.
Right,
but it's really so funny that it was more important to say that rather than, and so we know that using the word man is really not as neutral of a term when we talk about humanity. Really quickly, the project that I'm working on is called, it was seed funded by DARPA. It's called 100-Year Starship. And the purpose of it is to make sure that we have the capabilities for human interstellar flight and within the next 100 years. That is not launching a mission. That's not, we don't have like trying to build an enterprise waiting in the wings. It's really about making sure we have the capabilities so we can jumpstart that incredible innovation and knowledge and systems that happen when you try something you really, really don't know how to do. We could do Mars. There's a lot of engineering challenge. There's some engineering challenges, but we know Mars address. We've been on it a couple times, even when I was a little kid. So it's really about how do we do something we don't know how to do, which really pushes us. So for example, we have to go much faster. We have to have just generate incredible amounts of energy. The chemical propulsion will not make it happen. So we have to generate this energy safely. We have to figure out about self-replicating systems, right? We have to understand about how we really grow food, because here on Earth, it just sort of grows, right? We have to do all of these things and figure that out. And as we understand that, we can actually apply that knowledge to life here on Earth. And in fact, our project that won this proposal was called An Inclusive Audacious Journey Transforms Life Here on Earth and Beyond. We were modestly seed funded, so we have to do all the work ourselves for keeping it up. But you can bet if I were not the one leading this team, the first word inclusion would not be inclusive. But inclusive across ethnicity, gender, and geography, but also across disciplines, because you can't do anything this big being separate by not looking at finance, by not looking at societal impact, by not having people tell the story well. And just like really, let me just bring this around. One of the offshoot projects of this was called Look Up, which was announced and held back in October of last year. But it's an ongoing project because what's above us unites us. The thing that I had when looking back at the Earth from space was there was this incredible planet, right? But the impact of looking up is just as strong. Because imagine, we're in this incredible universe, right? But we're not necessarily special, except as we are unique. But we're not the one last great hope. But how can we use what's above us to unite us? So if you go, you can get a Skype app. Sky Selfie, right? And it really is free, and it's on iOS and Android, and you can take an image of the sky or whatever represents text, video, audio, and then upload it, and it shows up on a globe, an interactive globe, because we want people to see how they're connected on this world. And so that's just one of the sociocultural impacts for doing something with space and with technology.
Well, that's beautiful and inspiring for this next generation and the generation after. You know, that's a great focal length to be thinking about, you know, the future of human space travel. And so we have just a moment or two left, and there's folks literally be watching this all over the world, folks from all races and nationalities and spiritual outlooks and gender identities. And so what would you leave them with if you left them with some parting wisdom and advice, Ibtihaj?
Do you want to go first this time? I feel like...
Go ahead.
So I
I'm
can
good.
take notes and tweet whatever you say.
Okay.
You know, I think one of the turning points in my career as an athlete and also as a person was just making the decision to put my faith over my fears. And I think that that's something that we can all do for ourselves, no matter what age you are, where you're from. Oftentimes we allow people in our lives who are close to us or images or things that we see to deter us from reaching our goals in life. And it's never too late to get started. Like you said earlier, I was told when I, graduated from college that I was too old to even think about a national team, or because I hadn't gone to World Cups before the age of 23, that I was too old to even think or be considered for an Olympic team. And for me, I use other people's doubts as motivation, but you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to arrive at that point to be motivated. You should motivate yourself. Be your own biggest cheerleader. Stop relying on people around you to uplift you. You can do that for yourself. And it all starts with like a few small words. I try to start my day off with positive thinking and positive mantras. I call them Muhammad Ali mantras. We all think that Muhammad Ali was like, just cocky, or I think that we oftentimes tell stories of him of being super cocky, but I think he was like everyone else, and he, especially as an athlete, got nervous. But I think that he learned to constantly speak about himself in uplifting ways that helped him in the boxing ring. And I try to live out my life in the same way and just try to uplift myself. And I think we can all do that for ourselves. Like, chase down your dreams and don't be fearful. Dream fearlessly.
That's super memorable.
Yeah.
You're an inspiration.
Thank you.
All of us, me included. Dr. Jemison, I'll give you the final word.
So I want to very strongly underline what you said, that it's so much about what you do internally. I want to add just one other piece, that is, if you're wondering, how you get this inner drive, let me let you know that you have a right to be here, right? So that was the one takeaway I came away from in space, was I have a right to be in this universe. I'm as much of this universe as any speck of stardust, like the moon, the stars. We have a right to be here. So use that right and do what you will with it. But if it gets really hard, I want you to remember one other thing. You can take your work very seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Have a sense of humor. How do you get through things? We're going to do some really crazy things in life, right? And some of them are going to seem really, dramatic at the time, and they probably were. But have a sense of humor. Live life really fully, but be willing to think about yourself in terms that allow you to lighten things up a little bit from time to time.
That's a beautiful point to end on. So thank you, everyone. Thanks to all watching online. It's a privilege and an honor. Thank you.